some rivers that we used to cross. We couldn't cross because they were full, or they were always like perennial, or they had water in them. But right now it's all dry. You just walk through and literally ask people, what happened here? And they said, oh, we don't know. The water just disappeared, So that's part of how I grew up. And those impacts and those observations have kind of shaped my desire to affect, I would say, policy, because in my own thinking, sometimes it's policy that has an impact in all these things that these things that affect communities.
In my region, for example, in Croatia, one thing that I notice from growing up to now is we have really intense fires. And of course, there have always been fires in the area because it's a relatively warm region. But now we see fires intensifying every single year. And unfortunately, I don't feel like yet we have the policies to really make sure that people are safe when the fires happen. Often the people who know the most about the land that they're on and the ecosystem that they're in are, of course, the people who have lived there for millennia or hundreds of years. And I think I see that.
I'm in Canada here. I met some Indigenous First Nations, Indigenous communities as well. So I met some of the chiefs and some of the leaders because I was doing a placement with the city of Calgary. And I remember one of the chiefs saying, we knew all about flooding before, and we knew that we should not settle in harm's way. We should not settle along the rivers. Mm-hmm. So our communities were built like way off the water, and they place a very important value on water as well, because water is life. That's how they define it. Water is life, and they respect it. But in terms of how the water is the waterway is being destroyed by whatever happens in the city. It might be pollution, dumping, sewer in the water and all that. They complain and they feel they're not involved in that. So they've got a different view. And also the other thing that I wanted to mention, drawing from back home, indigenous knowledge systems. So they already had ways of knowing how to do stuff, for example, if it's going to rain, they would know when a flood would occur, and also tell the people in advance. The method back home, what they would do was light a fire. If you see a fire, that means there's a warning that's been given. So it's a controlled fire. So and it's lit by probably one of the elders in the villages. So whenever you see smoke from his place, there's something going on, and you have to, either go there for a meeting, but you really know that there's something serious going on. So these were like ways of communicating. And other ways of knowing included maybe migratory birds. So whenever you see migratory birds, for example, one of them that we've got back home, we call it Shuramurowe, which kind of means there is going to be abundance in rain. From the name, that's the name of the bird, but then that's what it means. So when you see the bird, you kind of know that there's going to be rain, a lot of rain, or there's going to be flooding, in that area. So you wouldn't see those birds like anywhere. But then that knowledge has been eroded, It has no place in policy. From what I've realized, nobody would listen to folklore or folktale or all these, just stories, oral tradition, and say we're gonna stick to them to make policy, or use them to make policy. So that's an issue, and that has affected the place of the local communities in the policy, and in terms of, and also in terms of driving policy and making policy meaningful to them or applicable to them, because there's a gap. From what I see, there's a gap in understanding. I don't think we've got a term for climate change ourselves in my own dialect. We generally, when people talk about climate change, they talk about the changing of the seasons, but not, I think the understanding is different, although the impact is the same, and how the communities themselves understand those policies they've got, different understanding of the same issue. But I'll be interested in hearing like how you also champion adaptation in your communities, in your work.
When I was little, I was really interested in kind of people's relationship to land, and obviously climate change has a big effect on that. Those who have contributed the least to climate change, like local communities and Indigenous peoples, especially in the global south, aren't the ones who bear the brunt, because I think also it's really clear that the people who historically have had the most emissions who are historically most responsible for climate change are then not feeling the impacts, whereas people who have historically actually lived very sustainably with the land who are bound by the land and who steward nature sustainably are, of course, the ones who feel the most impacted. It's really scary to see this happening in front of our eyes. And then, of course, thinking about, okay, what will happen then in 10 years and how will people be able to adapt, and what are policy measures that we can take. For me, like having worked in adaptation before, I think it can be, I don't know how you find it, but it can be frustrating sometimes, because I think I see the need for really concrete action happening now, especially say, for example, in Croatia, in the case of fires, we really need to increase our capacity on firefighters, on special types of airplanes that put out fires, on knowledge, on how to react, how to make sure people know where to evacuate for it to be safe, and all of these things. And I don't think we have them yet. And it feels quite urgent. So what I've tried to do, or I'm hopefully trying to do, is just really like work with people in local communities and Indigenous peoples and try to make sure that they have a space in the policy discussion to really give input and to lead that. Because I think there's a lot of knowledge that maybe policymakers in capital cities in the global north definitely don't have and could be much better informed. And it's really just explaining to people that not only are these people losing their livelihoods, but they're also losing a maybe more sustainable way of living. A lot of Indigenous worldviews really encompass this idea of that nature is very complex, and in order for us to survive and thrive, we need to take care of nature in a way that makes sure that it can then take care of us as well.